The Las Vegas Raiders are at a very interesting point in the 2024 NFL season. They currently sit at 2 and might be starting to find their identity. However, they've also been through some major headlines recently, including their head coach, Antonio Pierce, calling out members of the team just a couple of weeks ago. One of those players was Jack Jones. To give you a little background, after the Raiders lost to the Carolina Panthers, Antonio Pierce held a press conference where he mentioned that certain players were making business decisions on the field, implying that they weren't giving full effort. Jack Jones was one of those players Pierce was referring to. As a result, Jones was benched in the next game against the Cleveland Browns. He didn't play in the first quarter of that game. When asked about the situation, Jack Jones was very straightforward. He said, "Me and AP have been doing this for a long time. We have an understanding." That response is why I'm a big fan of Jack Jones. Some players might have complained, requested a trade, or gotten emotional after being called out by their coach. But not Jack Jones. He owned up to his mistakes. He missed tackles against the Panthers, but instead of sulking, he took the criticism and prepared himself for the next opportunity. This kind of attitude is something every player should have. Now, some people are saying that Jack Jones wasn't giving full effort against the Panthers, but I don't think that's why Pierce benched him. The issue wasn't his effort, it was his tackling. If you watch the tape, you'll see that tackling has always been a weak spot for Jack Jones. He tends to miss tackles, and that's something he has struggled with for a while. So I don't believe he wasn't trying. I think he just wasn't able to make the tackles he needed to in those moments. Despite that, Jones responded to the benching in the best way possible. He didn't shy away from the criticism, and he clearly has a strong relationship with his coach, which is important. That ability to take feedback and improve is what makes him stand out. But Jack Jones isn't the only player worth mentioning in the Raiders' defensive back room. Nate Hobbs, for example, is their slot corner, and that's a very different role from an outside corner like Jacorian Bennett. Playing inside as a slot corner comes with unique challenges compared to being a boundary corner on the outside. Just because both are labeled as cornerbacks doesn't mean their responsibilities are the same. It's almost like two different positions entirely. Nate Hobbs has been really impressive in his role as the slot corner, but it's Jacorian Bennett who has been stealing the spotlight for the Raiders lately. Right now, Bennett ranks as the fourth best cornerback in the league when it comes to reception percentage allowed, which is quite an achievement. Just to clarify, we're only considering players who have played over 150 snaps, not those who have only seen a few plays. Bennett has been targeted 15 times so far and hasn't allowed a single touchdown, which is incredible. This means he's not just holding his own, he's excelling. In addition, he's broken up several passes, showcasing his skills. If you've been watching the games, you can see that he's really coming into his own. I'm excited to see how he continues to grow as a cornerback. What's interesting is that Bennett is only in his second year, while Jack Jones is in his third. Both players are still quite young and learning the ropes. Sometimes we expect players to step onto the field as top-tier cornerbacks right away, but it often takes time to develop those skills. I can't wait to see how these guys improve and become even better. On another note, there's some news about Max Crosby. While it's not 100% confirmed, he is expected to play for the Raiders again. He practiced this week, though technically he was listed as limited on the injury report. However, from what I've seen in practice footage, Crosby looks comfortable and in good shape. He doesn't appear to be limping or struggling in any way. All signs point to him being ready to take the field against the Denver Broncos. This is huge news for the Raiders. Having Max Crosby back for this game is essential. Yes, our defensive end stepped up last week. Tyreek Wilson did a great job, and Charles Snowden, Kyan Tuning, and A.R. Robinson also contributed. But let's be real, the Denver Broncos' offensive tackles are a different challenge compared to the Cleveland Browns. The Browns were missing both of their starting tackles, but the Broncos have their top guys in place. This makes it much tougher for our backup defensive ends to get to the quarterback. With Max Crosby back in the lineup, we can expect more success on the field. Christian Wilkins and Adam Butler have also been solid throughout the season, so hopefully they can keep up their performance. The matchup against the Broncos is critical, especially given the number of injuries we're dealing with. The injury report shows a lot of names, and while some may not impact the game much, the absence of players like Thayer Munford and Michael Mayer does matter. DJ Glazer has looked good, and Brock Bowers has stepped up, but having Munford back would add experience and depth to the lineup. We haven't faced a team yet that has two top-tier defensive ends, but that's coming soon. While Glazer does well at times, he can struggle too. It's great for his development to play, but if we want to win, having Munford back makes sense. We also used a sixth offensive lineman a lot last week, about 7 or 8 snaps, who knows. We might lean on that strategy even more moving forward. Michael Mayer would make a significant impact as well, but he's still out for personal reasons. There's been some speculation about whether he wants to be traded, but I find that hard to believe. If he wanted a trade, it would likely happen quickly since he has value. Teams would definitely want a player of Mayer's caliber, and trading him now wouldn't get us much in return. Another player to watch is Dylan Parham, who is questionable for the game. He was limited in practice, but having him back is crucial for our offensive line. The ideal lineup includes Colton Miller, Jackson Paris, John Johnson, Andre James, and Dylan Parham. If Parham plays, it would make a big difference. Last week, when Parham got hurt, our offensive line really struggled when Cody Whitehair came in. We need a healthy line, especially with Alexander Mattison starting for the Broncos this week. I'm excited to see how it all plays out, but we need our best offensive line to step up. The success of a run game relies heavily on the scheme and the offensive line supporting it. You could have an incredible running back like Josh Jacobs, but his best seasons come down to having the right scheme in place. Once defenses adjust, if your offensive line is just average, success can vanish quickly. We saw this firsthand with Jacobs, who, despite being a fantastic running back, struggled when the support wasn't there. As for Alexander Mattison, we still don't fully know how good he is, but he has had some success in limited carries. Now he's stepping up as the full-time starter for the Raiders with Zamir White out. Mattison said, "I practice and prepare mentally and physically the same way every single week. I've had great mentorship that taught me to prepare like a starter. For me, nothing changes. I just go in and give my all to help the team win." I'm excited to see what he can do with this opportunity. I hope we also get to see Dylan L. get some carries. He has a lot of potential, and while he's mostly been playing special teams, I'd love to see him get some chances on offense. It's also important to note that Mattison might face some challenges as a full-time back, but I believe this current scheme is much better suited for him than some of the ones he's worked with in the past. I'm really eager to see how he performs. Now let's wrap things up by talking about an interesting survey that came out from The Athletic. They asked players who they think is the most annoying player in the NFL. Not surprisingly, Max Crosby and Christian Wilkins made it into the top 6. This comes down to their trash-talking style on the field. Interestingly, last year, the survey used the term trash talk, but this time it was called most annoying. I see this as a positive, though. Both Crosby and Wilkins are standout players who back up their talk with impressive performances. Wilkins dominates his opponents and isn't shy about letting them know it. Just look at the highlights or the mic'd-up moments. Crosby also loves to chat on the field, and his skills speak for themselves. I found it fascinating that these two players received so many votes. What do you all think about it? If you enjoyed this video, consider subscribing, and I'll see you next time with more updates.